My whole thing on Jonathan retiring, he's been talking to me, I've been talking to him. I mean, he's 54, I'm 53. I mean, we know guys that did it till they're 60-something. But like I said, times have changed.
You're one of the most entertaining guys on one of the most dangerous shows on television. Fans love you. The Time Bandit is iconic. The ratings are strong. And then, after season 13, you're just gone. No big farewell, no dramatic send-off, just gone. That's exactly what happened with Andy Hillstrand. And if you've ever sat there wondering where he went and why, you are in the right place. Let's break it all down. Who is Andy Hillstrand? Before we get into all the drama, let's do a quick reset. Because if you want to really understand why Andy leaving was such a big deal, you need to know who he actually was on this show. Andy Hillstrand was born on September 1963 in Homer, Alaska, into a family of fishermen. His father and grandfather were both deeply entrenched in the commercial fishing industry. This wasn't a guy who stumbled into fishing for fun. It's literally in his blood. 3 generations deep. He's been on boats since he was a toddler. That's all he remembers as a kid. So by the time Deadliest catch came calling, Andy had already lived more years on the water than most people spend doing anything. He and his brother Jonathan co-captained the F5 Time Bandit, the family's custom-built fishing vessel that became one of the most recognizable boats in the entire Deadliest catch fleet. Not only are the 2 brothers masterful fishermen with over 30 years of experience, but they also became known for being involved in various Deadliest catch dramas, which kept audiences glued to their screens for over a decade. What made Andy special wasn't just the fishing, it was his personality. Where Jonathan was loud and front-facing, Andy had this unpredictable, wild-card energy that you couldn't take your eyes off. Fans loved that Andy brought his no-nonsense attitude to the show, along with his fun-loving spirit, which kept the morale of his crew members high during the treacherous crab seasons. And on top of all that, the man is a 4-time world qualifier for the National Barrel Horse Association and a 4-time Alaska State champion barrel racer. Yeah, the guy fishing king crab in -30-degree winds is also an elite horseman. Andy Hillstrand contains multitudes. So when this guy disappeared from Deadliest catch after season 13, fans noticed immediately. And they wanted answers. So where did things actually start going wrong between the Hillstrands and the world of reality TV? The first big clash with Discovery. To understand why Andy walked away in 2017, you've got to rewind to 2010, because that's when the tension first went public. And it gives you the blueprint for everything that followed. Discovery Channel, naturally wanting to capitalize on the Hillstrands' popularity, pitched them a spin-off series called Hillstranded. The brothers agreed. And then, according to Discovery, they didn't show up for what was needed. Discovery Channel sued the brothers, accusing them of breaching their contract by failing to appear for photo shoots and interviews for their personal spin-off, Hillstranded. That's a lawsuit from the network that's literally made you a household name. It's a big deal. But Andy's account of what happened is worth hearing because it explains the core friction that would define his entire relationship with the show going forward. According to Andy, it was a lot about our rights to do our own brand. There was a lot of misunderstanding. We thought Discovery had everything they needed. But then they came back and said they needed pickup shots, so our schedule was pretty much screwed. It got to the point in our relationship where something had to change, and we just said enough's enough. So we butted heads for a while. That phrase, enough's enough, is going to matter later. Remember it. The dispute got resolved. They announced they would be leaving the show, but ended up reaching a settlement just weeks later and returned. And notably, this wasn't just the Hillstrands. Their colleague Sig Hansen left the project in protest too, but the conflict was resolved a month later. So on the surface, everything went back to normal. They settled, they returned, fans got their Time Bandit fix. But here's the thing. You don't go through a lawsuit with your employer, patch it up with a settlement, and just forget it ever happened. That kind of thing leaves a mark. The trust was cracked. And a cracked foundation is a lot harder to build on. If the relationship with Discovery was already strained, what was the thing that finally pushed everything completely over the edge? The fireworks. Lawsuit. Things get really messy. Okay, this is where the story takes a genuinely significant turn. And it all starts with a side business the Hillstrands had built around their brand. Hillstrand Fireworks. In 2013, an incident happened aboard the Time Bandit that would take years to fully play out. But when it did, the timing couldn't have been worse for Andy. In 2015, Andy and Jonathan were sued by one of their crew members, David "Beaver" Zielinski, who was injured on the job when a firework he was holding prematurely exploded. The incident took place aboard Jonathan and Andy's Time Bandit boat in 2013. Zielinski said the Hillstrands were responsible for his maimed hand because Time Bandit marketed the fireworks that were being used. Now, let's be real about what a firework exploding in your hand means. That's a catastrophic injury. That's not something you recover from in a few weeks. And for a commercial fisherman, someone whose livelihood depends entirely on their physical capability, that kind of injury can genuinely end everything. The lawsuit worked its way through the courts for 2 years, and the verdict landed in 2017, the exact same year Andy left the show. A jury sided with Zielinski, and he was awarded $1.35 million after testifying that the injury ended his career as a crab fisherman. The jury initially determined that Zielinski should get $2.7 million in compensation, but later halved the amount after finding him half responsible for the injuries. So the jury split responsibility. Beaver bore some fault too, which is why the award was reduced from $2.7 million. But $1.35 million is still a massive judgment. And this wasn't abstract background noise while Andy was happily filming television. This was an active, years-long legal battle that consumed real time, real money, and real mental energy. Try to picture running a commercial fishing operation, managing a production schedule for a major cable network, and fighting a multi-year personal injury lawsuit at the same time. Something's going to give. And for Andy, it seems like it all gave at once. But is a lawsuit really enough on its own to make someone walk away from a show they'd been part of for over a decade? Or was something deeper going on? The real breaking point. Burnout. You can't film your way out of. Here's the thing that gets lost in all the drama about lawsuits and network disputes. Andy Hillstrand was just burned out. Like, genuinely, deeply, at his limit, burned out. People sometimes forget that the guys on Deadliest catch are not actors. They're real commercial fishermen doing one of the most physically demanding, psychologically grueling jobs on the planet. The Bering Sea is not a set. Those waves are real. That cold is real. The sleep deprivation, the danger, the pressure to bring home enough catch to make the whole thing financially viable, all of it is real. And let's not sugarcoat it. This isn't just a tough job. This is weeks out at sea in freezing temperatures, hauling thousands of pounds of gear, running on barely any sleep, knowing one wrong move could end everything. People have gotten seriously injured out there. Some haven't made it back at all. And on top of doing that actual job, you've got a camera crew asking for more footage, a network making production demands on a schedule that doesn't bend to fishing windows, and a spin-off project that already caused one legal battle. At a certain point, the math just doesn't work anymore. Andy made it clear, in his own words, that the relationship reached a breaking point long before his exit. That quote we mentioned earlier, "Enough's enough," wasn't just about one disagreement over pickup shots. It was the accumulation of years of friction between what Discovery needed and what actually worked for a commercial fisherman's life. Andy brought his no-nonsense attitude to the show, and that same no-nonsense approach probably made it harder, not easier, to keep compromising with a network that had different priorities. When a guy like Andy decides something isn't working, he doesn't tend to drag it out. And the fireworks lawsuit arriving at the same moment? That was the final weight on an already overloaded scale. While Andy has not publicly discussed his reason for leaving the show in detail, there are a few factors that may have gone into it. But between the network friction, the legal battle, and the sheer grind of decades on the Bering Sea, it's not hard to connect the dots. So while Andy was stepping back, what was happening with the Time Bandit itself, and where did that leave his brother Jonathan? The Time Bandit situation and the brothers go separate ways. When both Hillstrand brothers stepped away from Deadliest Catch after season 13, there was a period where the Time Bandit's future genuinely looked uncertain. The boat that had been a fixture on the show for over a decade suddenly wasn't on it anymore. Fans felt the absence. In 2018, Andy and Jonathan announced their hiatus from the crab fishing business, due to the Time Bandit having no favorable conditions to keep roaming the waters of the Bering Sea. Crab fishing isn't just about the boat and the crew, it's about quotas, market conditions, and whether a given season is even financially viable. Sometimes the math simply doesn't work. The boat eventually went up for sale. In 2019, the brothers listed the Time Bandit for $2,888,888 on the Dock Street Brokers site, though the price was lowered in the following months for reasons unknown, to ultimately taking it off the website in 2020. The fact that it came off the market suggests they held on to it, and indeed, Jonathan eventually brought the Time Bandit back to Deadliest Catch in season 17, but that's where the brothers' paths diverged. Jonathan clearly still had the Bering Sea in his blood. While Jonathan returned in 2021, Andy has not come back in any sustained way. The show went on. The Time Bandit went on. Andy just wasn't on it. Did Andy ever try to come back at all? Or was the exit really permanent from day one? The COVID setback and the season 19 cameo. Here's a detail that surprises a lot of people. Andy actually had a planned return to Deadliest Catch that got completely derailed at the last minute. Andy was actually meant to reappear in the show for the 17th season, aired in 2021, but fell sick with COVID-19 when the show was filming. Not only did this deter him from making his long-awaited TV return, but it also pushed his brother Jonathan to find another co-captain to cover Andy's spot. That's genuinely tough. He was set to come back, and a global pandemic literally stepped in and took that off the table. He didn't just decide not to show up, he got sick. And that's the kind of thing that can shift momentum in a way that's hard to recover from. Andy only returned for season 19, appearing briefly during the fall Golden King crab season. And after that, back to the quiet life. No fanfare, no big "I'm back" moment. Just a cameo, and then gone again. In February 2022, he made an appearance at the annual Maine Fishermen's Forum event to raise awareness about climate change, which at least showed he was doing well and still engaged with the fishing community in some capacity. But a forum appearance is a long way from being a series regular on a Discovery Channel show. So what does Andy Hillstrand's life actually look like now? And is there any part of him that misses the Bering Sea? Life after Deadliest catch. Horses, family, and a 17-acre ranch. If you thought Andy Hillstrand's post-Deadliest catch life would involve chasing some other kind of fame or attention, you'd be very wrong. What he did instead is honestly kind of great. Andy and his wife Sabrina moved from Alaska to a 17-acre farm in Chandler, Indiana. And on that farm, they built something that reflects exactly who Andy is when the cameras aren't rolling. Hobby Horse Acres is a 17-acre horse ranch in Chandler, Indiana, where Andy and his wife, Sabrina, fulfill a dream of spending their days riding and helping others learn to ride. The guy who used to wrestle crab pots in the Bering Sea is now teaching kids how to ride horses in the Indiana heartland. That's not a downgrade. That's a whole different kind of life, lived entirely on his own terms. And this wasn't some random pivot. Andy's connection to horses goes back decades. Andy started riding at age 28, inspired by his oldest daughter's 4-H activities. In those 14 years, he became a 4-time world qualifier for the National Barrel Horse Association and 4-time Alaska State Champion barrel racer. This is legitimately elite-level equestrian achievement. Andy wasn't casually into horses, he competed at the national level. The Hillstrands specialize in natural horsemanship and provide daily riding lessons, riding day camps, and manage a stable of 13 horses. One of the motivations Andy has shared is giving back, specifically making riding accessible to kids who might not otherwise get the opportunity. Andy and his wife Sabrina are out here living their best ranch life at Hobby Horse Acres in Chandler, Indiana. They've got 17 acres to play with, 13 horses under their care, and a whole setup where people can come through for riding lessons, day camps, or even board their own horses. And the vibe? Very much, we actually know what we're doing, because they lean into natural horsemanship instead of all that overly rigid stuff. On the family side, he has been married to his wife Sabrina for more than 30 years. He and Sabrina have 2 daughters and some grandchildren. The horse connection actually goes back further than most people realize. Andy has shared that one of his daughters got into horses when she was young, and that's what first pulled him into the equestrian world too. One kid's passion for riding eventually turned into a world-class barrel racing career for Andy and a full 17-acre ranch operation for the whole family. Not a bad ripple effect from a little girl who just really liked horses. He's also got other interests most people don't know about. Andy plays the drums and is also known for his interests in hunting, remote-control airplanes, and diving and snorkeling. This is a man who is absolutely not sitting around being bored. Given everything, the burnout, the lawsuits, the ranch, the grandkids, is there any realistic chance Andy ever comes back to Deadliest Catch? Is a return ever coming? Let's be honest here. The signs don't point toward a comeback. And that's probably the right call. Andy hasn't made any public noise about wanting to return. He's not on social media generating buzz. He's not giving interviews hinting at a return. Everything about his behavior since leaving the show is consistent with a man who made a clear, deliberate decision and has no regrets about it. Jonathan took a different path. He came back. The Time Bandit is back on the show, and he's still part of the Deadliest Catch world. Jonathan returned in 2021. Andy has not. That contrast is telling. Same family, same boat, same history. Completely different choices about what comes next. And when you think about what Andy actually walked away from, versus what he walked into, it's hard to argue with his decision. He traded the grind of the Bering Sea and the demands of a network television production for a horse ranch in Indiana, a long marriage, grandkids, and the freedom to do things on his schedule. For someone who spent decades living by fishing seasons and production timelines, that kind of autonomy is worth a lot. The fireworks lawsuit is settled. The TV chapter is effectively closed. And Andy Hillstrand, third-generation fisherman, elite barrel racer, crab boat co-captain, seems to be exactly where he wants to be. So that's the real story. No mystery accident, no secret feud nobody's talking about. Just a man who got burned out on the demands of network TV, dealt with some serious legal fallout, and ultimately decided that life on a ranch in Indiana with his wife and grandkids beats another season in the Bering Sea. Honestly, hard to argue with that. If you got value from this video, go ahead and hit that like button. It genuinely helps more people find this content. And if you want more real breakdowns on what happened to your favorite Deadliest Catch cast members, past and present, subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss the next one. I want to hear from you in the comments. Do you think Andy made the right call leaving when he did? Or do you wish he'd come back full-time alongside Jonathan? Drop your thoughts below. I read them all. See you in the next one.